We are live. I will wait for our YouTube to actually go live and then give folks a few minutes. We got a lot to talk about this week. We're live on YouTube, I see. We got some viewers slowly trickling in. That's good. Have you looked at the injury situation for this week, or?
I know it's a mess.
Yeah, it's a mess, and it's probably where we should start this week. So, it's going to sort of dictate ownership and where the value is and roster construction and all that good stuff. Yeah, we got a good amount of viewers in here, so why don't we start? Feels like we do this every week with your San Francisco 49ers and the injuries they're dealing with on the offense.
Yeah, no Debo. Kittle's out too, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, so it's basically Ayuk, Juwan Jennings, Jordan Mason, and then who knows what Shanahan's gonna do. I'm still riding for my guy Jacob Cowing, but I don't know if he's actually gonna show up this week. He's even gonna he hasn't gotten any snaps yet. I was convinced that Shanahan might go there.
The thing with the Niners is when you remove like those core pieces like CMC and Debo, it's not like these other guys are going to come in and start playing the role that they were playing, other than Jordan Mason. But the volume is going to get concentrated a ton down to like basically just Mason and Ayuk and a little bit of Juwan Jennings. Like I don't think Eric Saubert's coming in and playing a Kittle role, or Chris Conley or Ronnie Bell are coming in and just soaking up like 8 targets a game.
Yeah, you would think so.
So there's going to be some ownership there for sure, especially on Mason. On DK, his price is still kind of egregious at 6,200. I think on FanDuel he's priced more for his workload. But like these players are still really cheap for the Niners, and the game environment is not terrible at all. We just saw Kyler Murray tear up the Rams. And Brock Purdy has struggled in the past as far as like when he doesn't have all of the core pieces of the Niners playing. It might be a little bit harder for him to move the ball, but I don't foresee it really being a huge issue for them.
Yeah, and Niner stacks again, like we're far and away in my sim. So in the sims I ran a few minutes ago for DraftKings on the, I think I ran the slant, like the 20,000 entry contest. Niner stacks. So Purdy was owned 4.938% in all lineups, and Niner stacks were made up 11.74% of the top 1% on lineups. So it's like double basically. Double the owner's projected ownership is what you'll get in the top 1% if my projections are good. Just shows like how good. The Niners just project so well with how beat up the Rams are, and how good Shanahan's is scheming. It's just difficult to be like, I want to play Juwan Jennings.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. Like, definitely love getting to Ayuk and Mason, and even combining them with Purdy. I think even if you're not playing Purdy, Mason and Ayuk are good looks this week. And while we're on the game, you mentioned the Niners are hurting on both sides of the ball as far as injuries. Their defense doesn't look good. They've lost a bunch of O-linemen, obviously Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. They're coming in to play the Niners, and are we going to see an increased role for Demarcus Robinson or Tyler Johnson or Jordan Whittington? These guys are going to have to play snaps, and they're going to have to be throwing the ball this game. So,
yeah, I've seen Whittington get a lot of hype this week. I'm not sure how much I buy into it personally, but I could definitely see. McVay, once he finds his guys, he's so good at getting them the ball. It's just I don't know how much McVay trusts Whittington.
Yep.
It's like who else are you going to trust in the offense right now?
There's not a lot of looks. I think one of the reasons I think Whittington's pretty popular is his price point for one. He's cheaper than the other two receivers, and it, like you said, we don't really know what Sean McVay is going to do. He's really good at scheming, and if Jordan Whittington's the guy who's getting open and is able to catch the ball, then he's going to get fed targets.
Yep.
Okay, good for that game. Other key injuries, a lot of running backs here. Obviously, the Texans lost both Joe Mixon and Dameon Pierce. So we're going to see a situation where Dario Gumbawale and Cam Akers are splitting snaps, or at least having a timeshare there. Projected to be really popular, more so on FanDuel, where he's I think the Stone Min at 4,000, and he's probably going to get up to 50%, if not over. I'm not sure how much I love the chalk of Cam Akers this week.
Yeah, I'm with you there. He sims well because the floor, but
Right.
I just don't want to play this stupid Texans running back carousel again with Ogunbowale. He did the same. They did the same thing last year with him, and I think he had one decent game and then underwhelmed every other game when like Pierce was out last year. I think I'm remembering that correctly, but I could be wrong now that I'm. But anyway,
Yeah.
I don't want to play this. I don't want to play this Cam Akers into ownership as well.
Yeah. I mean,
One thing if
it'd be a different
but
story if he was owned, or if he wasn't owned, but if he's coming in with a ton of ownership and people are just piling on the spot at running back, I don't think I'm going to land there, or I'm definitely going to be at least under the field. So I don't think he's putting up like a 20 plus DK fantasy point outcome where like you have to have him.
yeah, and on FanDuel, if he doesn't score a touchdown, even if he gets 100 yards rushing, he could still not be in large field contests anyway. He could still not be optimal.
Yeah, and he's projected to be even more owned on FanDuel, where you don't have the bonuses, you don't have PPR receptions, and it is completely touchdown reliant. So I mean, one stack I like a lot this week is just attacking this game through the air. Like a CJ Stroud, Nico Collins. There's injuries on the other side of the Vikings as well, too, I believe. Or Justin's playing, but he did get hurt a bit last week. But I like playing the air in this game with like a Nico, Justin Jefferson. Jalen Naylor's looked really good too.
Yeah.
And you're basically funneling out a lot of that Cam Akers ownership and getting leverage on it by just saying that this game is scoring through the air, not on the ground.
Who do you like? So Minnesota, at least so far this year, and especially last week against San Francisco, Minnesota blitz basically every down against Purdy. I don't know if you saw that clip of Purdy after the game talking to Brian Flores. He's like, "Your defense is insane, bro."
Yeah, I've heard a lot of really good praise for Brian Flores and the way he's able to like hide his schemes on defense. Like the quarterback has a hard time adjusting to it. Like where you can't really read any pre-snap indicators because he keeps moving, linebackers around and safeties up and down, and he'll blitz off the edge, he'll blitz down the middle, he'll send an extra guy. Like it's something where like you have to react and not, like reaction versus like proaction, like being proactive or reactive. I mean, we saw it with Purdy. Like Brian Flores is able to kind of put these QBs in a blender, which, I mean, CJ Stroud I think is leagues above, but obviously he can make plays, he can scramble and get the ball to like Nico Collins, and he can take off. But it's definitely a situation where like the Vikings defense poses a lot of challenges for QBs.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering assuming that there's a lot of blitzing and a lot, usually at least historically they run more zone than man, Minnesota, or at least Brian Flores. So I'm just wondering which Houston receiver that benefits the most. Because Tank Dell, for example, doesn't get a lot of the short routes, but his ADOT is insane.
Yeah, he's going to be that perimeter long ball guy, and Nico's going to be the guy in the slot catching a lot of these like 7 to 10 yard slants, and he's a great after the catch receiver too. So
yeah,
I think if I'm going to somebody on the Houston side and playing this as like a stack, I think I prefer Nico for sure.
Yeah, I could see it. It's just Tank is so much fun to play because if you just last week, everybody's been. I am not the first person to say this, but everybody's looking at Tank's stats differently if he catches 2 passes. The one deep pass last week went right through his hands after that great play by Stroud, and then there was one in week 1 that I can't remember if it got called back or something happened that it wouldn't have been another long reception that like just completely changes his stats for the season so far. So I don't know, it's just tempting. I mean, maybe the play is just you double stack Houston.
Yeah, no, I like that. And we saw that in week 1 too, right? With Marvin Harrison Jr., where week 1 he scored like 3 or 4 fantasy points. They were kind of like a dud, but like there were scenarios in week 1 where he could have scored way more. And we saw in week 2 he came in way under owned. Nobody wanted to play him, and he smashed.
Yeah.
Other injuries, obviously the Seahawks playing, or the Seahawks playing the Dolphins, and the Dolphins will be playing without Tua. As you can see, that's kind of done some serious numbers on Tyreek Hill's projection and ownership. And I think he's just getting squeezed out of the top end from guys like CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra, and kind of like rightfully so. I'm trying to think back to last year when Skylar Thompson played. He's not an elite quarterback who's getting the ball downfield to Tyreek.
Yeah.
I do like Devon Achane this week a lot, just for like those, like they want to get the ball out of Skylar's hands as fast as possible. He'll be in catching like those probably like 4 to 5 targets, just quick dump offs, and then also I think they're going to just want to run the ball and get it out of Skylar's hands as much as they can.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I kind of wonder. This is super thin, and obviously I don't have him projected for any ownership, but I wonder if this is going to be like one of those weird. They run the ball 50 times and Jeff Wilson gets a ton of carries because they need somebody that can, keep Seattle off the field.
Yeah, I mean the Dolphins have talked about like they're playing obviously without Tua, but they're playing sort of like this injury safe role at running back where when Mostert's really healthy, they're not giving him the full workload and trying to split it between him and Achane. And if Mostert, comes back next week and is not 100%, like Achane's going to get more work. They want to keep these running backs healthy down the stretch into the season. So I could totally see, even in scenarios like if they're up a bunch or if they're trailing behind and the game's kind of gone, like you can totally see Jeff Wilson Jr. or even other running backs get in there and take some of that workload off him.
Yeah, and it's only a 2-game sample, but Seattle's like 23rd in the league right now in rush EPA allowed, but they're better in success rate. So I don't know. The defense has been all right so far. They've also played New England, which helps their defensive stats, even though they got run all over.
One thing I was curious about is on the Seahawks side, I saw Geno getting projected for some pretty healthy ownership at quarterback, like maybe like third or fourth highest projected. I'm just not sure I see this game environment being one. Like Geno hasn't really been good this year to begin with, and now you're going into a game against a banged up Dolphins team where there's so many other good game environments to tackle. I just don't really see why Geno's coming in with like 10% ownership on this slate.
Yeah, if you were like 3% or 4%, I'd be more interested. Mostly because Miami has the kind of players like even with Skylar Thompson, Miami has 4 or 5 players that can take a screen or a quick slant or whatever and score a touchdown in 10 seconds, which would give the ball back to Seattle's offense and force them to score. I just don't know. I just don't know if I want to do that at 10%.
Yeah,
Especially with a defensive minded head coach as well. I don't know. Seattle hasn't really played with the lead very much. They did, I guess, in the second half against Denver. But I just don't know how aggressive they would be if they got an early lead.
Yeah, and we talked a lot about running quarterbacks last week and how obviously that rushing upside gives you a massive floor and an even higher ceiling. And look at where Geno's at in terms of ownership between Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray, and Lamar Jackson, like absolute foot demons. And you've got Geno Smith, the statue, paired, up there with him. And I get he's cheap too, but Derek Carr is less owned and at 5,800 in a better game environment. And the Saints look fluid on offense. They look so good. Sam Darnold, 5,500 in a better game environment, I think. There's tons of these quarterbacks that I think are just either A, in a better game, or if you're looking for that cheap salary quarterback, like there's just better options on the board than Geno Smith.
Yeah, I do think we haven't mentioned this yet, but this is a great week for swapping because you have like 2 really, really great high total games in the 425 window.
Yep.
And then you have a couple games in the 105 window. We talked about the Minnesota and also the Philly game. Those 2 are really high totals as well. And those are like the 4 premium environments. So there's lots of like, at least by rostering Geno, you give yourself an out to pivot in. So let's say that you roster Geno, you played into that chalk and you played like a 3% guy in the early window who went off. Then you could just stay on that chalk. However, if your 3% guy in the early window sucks, then you want to go to like a lower owned option in the later slate. So maybe like a Stafford, Whittington stack or something.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. Basically, look at your roster for your 1 p.m. game. If you're doing well, kind of sit tight and hold. And if you find yourself behind the pack, there's a lot of really good low-owned options in these high game total environments in the PM slate. So definitely leave yourself room in the flex to move around for that scenario.
Yep.
I guess we haven't really talked about Dallas and Ravens, but that's a game environment I love this week. I love getting to like a Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, Jake Ferguson stack, or even like a naked Lamar or like a Lamar plus Zay with some of these Dallas pass catchers coming in super low owned, like Dak 5%. CD I think is also super low owned this week if I can find him. I sorted by ownership, so he's going to be way down at the bottom. CD 8%, Justin Jefferson 8%, and obviously like other receivers, we got Ayuk at 22 or 27, Devonta Smith without AJ Brown at 22. So some of these pay up receivers with massive ceilings that can smash a slate are coming in pretty low owned.
Yeah. Malik Neighbors.
Yeah.
With 50% more ownership than CD Lamb. I mean, yeah, obviously a huge price difference, but in that game environment, I know he's like the only receiver in New York that has any fantasy relevance, but geez, I don't know if I want to do that. I'd much rather go back to that Dallas game.
Yeah, and we're not getting, I don't know what it is. Like the game total sucks there. People have been banging the Amari Cooper drum for like a few weeks now, and if Amari Cooper is the guy who buries me in a week, then so be it. I'm not going to that.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Well, should we get a sim fired up here?
Yeah, we can.
Let's go for the flea flicker here. Nice contest, pretty big contest. Should we do some player boosts and player docs?
Oh yeah, we can do that too.
Let's do that.
Let's boost CD since we're talking about it.
Yep, that's the wrong direction. We're gonna give CD a thumbs up.
Yeah, and that'll also affect all of the projections in that game, by the way, when you do that. So it might be better to click on the game to show people.
And then running back, we kind of talked about how we're not really digging this Cam Akers chalk, so I'm going to give him a thumbs down. Quarterback wise, give a thumbs up to some of the environments we like. Definitely like Dak, Brock Purdy. Where is can't find him. There he is, Jared Goff. I kind of like that environment too. And that will hopefully get us some more Amon-Ra St. Brown too, who's lower owned and has that incredible upside.
Yeah. What is the owner? I guess go ahead and when you fire this up, what is the ownership I have projected in that Brady Arizona game? Sorry.
Take a look. So on the Detroit side,
so it's low. It's all low. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm gonna give a thumbs up to my clone David Montgomery too. Got to show some love there. And then on the Cardinal side, also fairly low. So, I mean, this is a tight spread, high total game. Yeah, that's projected for some pretty low ownership. I'm guessing there's just other spots people want to go to. Maybe people are sick of playing, Lions and Cardinals, but I mean, this is absolutely a game I'm going to have a lot of if the ownership stays as it is.
Yeah, I was going to poo-poo it if it was chalk, but now that it's like actually not chalk, it's a 51.5 total. What was? I mean, we just don't have any games in the 50s anymore in the NFL, at least for 3 weeks. So
yeah, let's take a look at it. It's the highest total on the slate.
Yeah,
2 points behind is the Eagles game. 2 points behind that is the Ravens game, and then a point and a half behind that's the Texans and Vikings. So I mean, yeah, that's kind of surprising to see ownership come out that way.
I guess it's pricing on Raw 82. What is Kyler, like 8K?
6,900.
69. Nice.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's projected for second or third highest on QB on the slate, but rushing upside, good game environment, great spot to be.
Yeah.
Encrypted says, new to the site, with main slate, what percentage off optimal are you guys comfortable with? So kind of for main slate, it's going to be tighter than Showdown for sure, but with that, it also depends on the size of your contest. So for like the Flea Flicker, for example, these massive contests that are, tens of thousands of people, 30% off optimal is a pretty good number. But if you're playing smaller contests, like maybe the Spy, like the 4,000 player Spy, or the Power Sweep, like the $150 3 max, or like these contests, I'd say between like 500 and, a few thousand players, I'd probably tighten that down to 20% off optimal around there. Just because you don't need to get as different in your ownership plays. You still want to be playing good projected players, and you just don't need as much differentiation against the field.
Yeah, and all the settings are built with large field contests in mind. So it's like the 30%, like leaving it as default minus adjusting the lineup scoring to what you want is fine. But then for smaller field, smaller max percent off optimal. Maybe not as much stacking in smaller field as well. I haven't really looked into it, but I would assume that's the case. So,
yep. Willie K says he loves Lamb this week too. Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm going to be having
he loves
tons of CD Lamb, and they're at home. Dallas at home sometimes just puts up ridiculous numbers. I know they haven't looked good, and I'm guessing that might be why ownership has been depressed. But as much as I want to hate the Cowboys and Dak Prescott, like the ownership is right, the ceiling is there in that game. It's just a spot you got to have in large field. Should we take a look at get lineups here while the sim runs?
Yeah.
So if you guys don't know, Get Lineups is powered by AceMind. This is sort of our way to get quick lineups with your input, and it just helps you get a good set of lineups to play without as much effort and configuration as the main site. So let's go in and look at our NFL lineups. Classic and the Sunday main slate. We've been building a lot of large field stuff in here. Do you want to maybe try a smaller one?
Yeah, that's fine.
Here's the power sweep I was talking about. It's the 4,000 person 3 entry. And we can sort of do the same thing like we did on this page where we're thumbsing up and thumbsing down people. We can go through and, for example, like Cam Akers, we can go and we can limit him. Who else are we? CD. We'll give CD a boost. And then, we were just talking about the Cardinals and the Lions apparently coming with some pretty low ownership. So I'm going to give my boy Amon-Ra a bit of a boost here as well. So let's go through and continue there. And like we were talking about before with max percent off optimal, since this contest is a smaller field, we don't need to go and swing for the fences. That's going to give you a lot of lower owned plays, a lot of one-offs, it's going to build a construction in a way that's attempted to be unique while still having winning upside, but the rate at which it wins is not going to be as high as other lineups. So for this one, I'm going to go for a medium risk build just because we don't need that sort of variation. And we're going to go ahead and get our lineups.
And disclaimer, I was working on this morning, working on some of the AI prompts, so yeah. Also, it's going to take a little longer than it used to.
That's fine. I did pull up some of your graphs here that you sent me if we want to chat about those for a second.
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing from this is just comparing what running some large field sims. These are just the frequency of stack ownership, where the stack is just who's the quarterback. Like a San Francisco stack is Brock Purdy plus however many players. It's just looking at how each stack performs. So like Niner stacks owned about 5% of the time in the entire field, and then they show up about 12% of the time, the top 1%. So we can see already Minnesota and San Francisco have the two biggest discrepancies between their ownership and how often they perform the top 1%. The weird one to me is Cleveland. I mean, I know you're saying about Cooper and Deshaun. I can't do it. I just can't do it, moral reasons, and like it's a 38 total in a game they're expected to dominate. I just don't want to do it.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And that sort of comes down to data too. It can come down to ownership and other things, why some team stacks show up better than others. But yeah, like there's a lot of game environments here that we were talking about earlier that we like, as far as Dallas, San Fran, Minnesota. It's just a good visualization on how stacks are performing relative to the field.
Yeah.
And then this one here is sort of like an XY plot where we have on the x-axis the projected ownership for a player, and then on the y-axis we have their ownership in the top 1% lineups. And this red line in the middle sort of indicates that a player is going to score in the top 1% as much as they are owned. And then everything above the line means they're sort of outperforming their ownership, and below the line means they're sort of underperforming. We've got sort of a big cluster down here at the bottom, but guys that pop out a ton are guys that we sort of talked about as far as injury news and other things with the Niners players, Jordan Mason and Brandon Ayuk. We've got our value running backs here from injuries, Cam Akers, Zach Charbonnet. Kamara obviously has one of the most insane workloads on one of the most insane offenses right now. And just any week he can score 40 points. So I'm not shocked to see him up there. Our Cardinals are kind of popping up here. We got Trey McBride outperforming, and then also in Dallas, Jake Ferguson. I like those two tight ends this week, as well as I'm not sure if I can see Brock Bowers down there, but Brock Bowers is also a guy this week that if I'm playing like the last guy in at tight end, I love getting him in.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's all those like the Ayuk and Mason are all just kind of high projected, high floor players, right?
yep.
That's why they sim so well. Because I mean, it's not like the Sims are thinking, but the Sims can know that they can get away with just playing those two and then finding lone darts um to throw their lineups up into the top.
Yeah.
I said that very poorly, but you get the idea, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Let's take a look at our lineups here.
Oh, that works too. I just DM'd you the new code.
Oh,
Last
there's a
week
new
on our
one.
stream, I realized that we gave away the code that we use for everybody to get free ones.
Oh, yeah, that's
Wasn't
kind of
ideal.
funny. All right, so we got some of our line stacks here because we boosted Amon Ra. We got some Goff and Amon Ra stuff here, kind of filling in some Niners value up top. We got our Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Tolbert here. That's a nice game environment we're looking at. Some more Dak CD stuff. This one's got Jake Fergie in there. Like this is a core stack from this week is the Prescott, Lamb, Ferguson stack.
Yeah. How are you feeling about those two Panthers?
Yeah, I mean, we never even talked about it this week. Are the Panthers back now? Are they gonna
Jesus.
actually show up this week? Maybe
They were competent with Dalton last year, or Dalton last year. I don't know. I could see it, but
they
I mean,
play the
in that
Raiders
kind
this
of
week.
lineup, yeah. In that kind of lineup where I'm playing into the Mason chalk, playing into the Kamara chalk as well. I don't mind taking shots on the Panthers. I mean, I did the first week. I took shots on Deontay Johnson. So
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think his fantasy output production is going to be better with Dalton than it was with Bryce Young. I'm kind of curious as to where sort of his ownership and projection and price are coming in at, because that could be an interesting spot. 9% ownership. So I mean, not nothing, but also not super chalk. And he's at a really good price. I mean, I'm guessing that they're going to be playing from behind this game most likely, and they're going to be throwing the ball. And Andy Dalton is serviceable.
Yep. I like the if you scroll up a little bit, the Dolphins. I'm pointing at the screen. The Goff, Zamir White, Devontae. I like that lineup a lot.
Yeah.
And CFB DFS legend Elijah Moore. Although I didn't see the kiddo thing. I don't know why. I wonder if I still have him questionable.
Lineups there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're getting some more Browns love.
I don't know. Anyway.
So this is Get Lineups. Just a quick, easy way for you guys to build lineups if you don't want to go to the site and go through the whole process of tweaking projections, running a sim, tweaking your outputs. If you just want a couple lineups to play, check out Get Lineups. Super easy, and with each of them, you get sort of an AI summary here with them. So be sure to check that out. And we do have our sim finish here. So a few new things that we pushed earlier this week on our lineup builder page here is obviously one is you can see the team chips here, the little chip icons. Gives you a good way to sort of visualize at a quick glance what your stacks are. Like up here, we can see we've got Purdy with Jennings, Ayuk, and Mason. A stack we sort of talked about a lot here. Other things we've put in here are filtering, which I'll refresh the page and will work. But we can see here we've got a list of all of our quarterbacks here. And if they're quarterbacks we just don't want to play, we can go in here and X them out. So like, for example, I was talking about Geno Smith. I don't want to play him at his ownership. So if I didn't want to include him in my 150 set, I could unclick him there. Malik Willis, Skylar Thompson, Trash Can Will Levis. It sort of gives you a way to easily filter out different players, and you can do the same for RB. If you didn't want to eat the Cam Akers chalk this week, we can go through and unclick him. Just gives you a better way to completely remove a player from your lineup without doing it over here on the right side. And the nice thing is you can do it at specific positions. So, for example, if you didn't want to play Jordan Mason in your flex, do the Niners play in the afternoon or the morning?
Yeah, they're in the afternoon window.
Okay, so it makes sense why he's in the flex. But, for example, if they played in the morning and you wanted to play Jordan Mason, just not in flex, you could untick him here in your flex position and then make sure he was only coming in the running back position.
Yep.
Another filter we added here are the primary and secondary stack stuff. So you can see here we've got all of our primary and secondary stacks. We can go through and filter out different ones we don't want to play from here. So, for example, in that Dallas game, I don't want to play Dak Prescott by himself, and I don't really want to play him with just one other pass catcher, but I'm fine with doing a pretty big stack of either 3, 4, or 5. So that'll filter it down even more and give you more options on building your lineups. And then, like always, we've got our exposure on the right where you can set min and maxes. Looks like we are getting a ton of the Niners, top 3 players in our, well, let's run 150 here so we can get a better look at things. And yeah, still up top, we've got Mason, Ayuk, and Purdy. So the Sims are all over the Niners this week.
Yeah.
And then we also have a team exposure column here. So, for example, if you look down here, some of these teams are not getting a ton of it in our 150. Like the Saints, for example, we've got 1% of Saints stacks lineups in our top 150. If I wanted more of that, I'd come in here and say I want at least 25% of the Saints. They got a nice offense in their cooking, and you can see that boosts up to 25%. And then likewise, for example, if you don't want to play the Niners this week, you can set a max exposure. Like right now, we've got 36%. I can say I only want 15% of my lineups to include Purdy stacks, and you can see that those are limited that way. So a lot of new, cool, fun stuff on this page here as far as getting the lineups exactly how you want them and allowing you to really curate your 150 set if you're a maxer.
Yep. And it just makes it it requires you to do less in pre-processing for your sim. So you can just upload your projection set, run a sim with whatever settings you want, but just realize that at the end you can do a lot of post-processing now to filter down to the 150 you want.
Yep, definitely. Do you want to chat a bit about the new ROI updates and sort of what those mean?
Yeah, they're sort of less relevant for Classic than they are for Showdown, but the basic idea was to show the variance and outcomes for each lineup, just from ROI specifically and from the number of duplicates. So like in super small fields or small slates where there's a limited number of lineup combinations and there's a high likelihood of duplicates, it gives you an idea of like maybe one lineup shows that has a really high ROI, but that's because it's not duplicated in one run or whatever. But then actually, like if you run it a couple more times, it has a lot of duplicates. So these will show at the end will show you kind of the variance in those in your ROI and duplicate numbers, give you a better idea of how good a lineup is.
Yeah, we'll probably do a Showdown video with me and John here soon, and we can talk more about it on that because, like you said, it's going to be a lot more relevant for Showdown where duplication matters a ton more than Classic.
Yeah, and I think you only ran one field here. Yeah.
Yep.
So also, it doesn't. Those have no. Those are all just going to be the same numbers as what we're already reproducing. Minus we have a median ROI. So the reason why the median ROI is helpful, and again, for one field, it's not as useful. But if you were running, let's say 10 generations, 10 contest generations, or 10 contest fields, one huge outcome for one lineup in one contest field sim would skew the average ROI, but the median ROI would stay low.
Yeah, for sure. For our viewers watching, do you guys have any questions or things you want us to touch on? Get those in the YouTube comments. And in the meantime, let's do a couple picks here, John. Let's pick a game environment we want to target this week that the field might not be targeting. And then we'll go through the positions and maybe pick like a quarterback or running back and a receiver that we like this week.
All right, you first.
All righty. Well, the game environment, I think this week that is going underlooked, we talked about, is the Dallas and the Ravens game. Pretty low ownership on a lot of these high ceiling players. And I think that's a great spot to get to this week. If you want to get like super weird, like in the milli, or you're playing a contest with like nearly 1 million entrants, I think that this Raiders-Panthers game, I kind of talked myself into it in my mind here. But Gardner Minshew, I looked at the stats here on ETR. Let's take a look at PROE this year, Jung. We've got Vegas dropping back at a 70% clip with a 6% PROE. And on their offense, the targets only really go to 2 people, in Devontae Adams and Brock Bowers. And now they're playing a Panthers secondary, which is putrid. But their offense might be able to stay in the game more than they would have in weeks past with Andy Dalton. And then for the run backs on the other side, you've got Deontay Johnson, who we talked about, who is pretty low price, pretty cheap. And he might be able to put up a fantasy point production that we're looking for that player.
Yep. I I mean, it's hard to poo-poo calling a game that has like a 3% combined ownership, but I mean, super small sample size. I know PROE is supposed to be accounting for this as well, but the
Right.
Raiders have been losing in both games they've played in so far this year, so you can
Hmm.
see the super high expected baseline pass rate. But I mean, I don't know. I don't know how much I'd buy into the early PROE numbers. Is my general
Yeah,
point.
that's fair. And I'm not saying this is like a smash pot game with a massive total and like you want to play this in all your lineups, but if you want to get
Yeah.
different in super large field, just play a couple Raider stacks, you know?
Yep. And the other bowl case is Carolina with Dalton. They might be a little. I mean, with Bryce Young, they were super slow uh, in plays. I don't know if you have that stat. I don't think ETR has it. I don't remember who has it. Maybe FTN does. But anyway, Carolina was one of the slowest teams between plays in terms of like snapping the ball. And maybe with
Yeah.
Dalton, they'd be a little faster, so that would speed the game up somewhat. That would also help. But like I said, I can't really hate on a calling a game with super low ownership like this is like a good environment to tackle. I'm just throwing the devil's advocate.
Yeah, oh, yeah, for sure. It's not a place I'm stuffing a ton of my lineups in, but I want to get a few of them.
Yeah, and for me, I'm gonna go right back to the same thing I think I've done for 3 weeks in a row to start the year. Minnesota, Houston. We're going. I like in if on that bar graph I showed you how well Minnesota stacks were performing.
Hmm.
And I mean, last week Jefferson catches a 97-yard touchdown, and it looked like he was gonna have an absolute smash. And he got hurt his quad.
Yep.
So I mean, I'm just going right back to Minnesota. I just think Kevin O'Connell throws the ball a lot. He's obviously not. He obviously trusts Arnold so far, and you have CJ Stroud on the other side, so you don't have any doubt in Houston's ability to stay with Minnesota in terms of scoring.
Hmm.
And Houston also doesn't have as much commitment to run the ball like San Francisco did last week, which helped keep that game lower scoring. So
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely am right back on the Vikings train.
Yeah, and like we talked about earlier, that does help us get off the Cam Akers chalk if you're playing the passing attack in that game. So I like that spot a lot as far as tournament play.
Yeah, and there's a lot of. I mean, there's so many viable combinations of pass catchers you could do. You could do the tank is only 5,200 on DraftKings. You could do the Jefferson Darnold tank, and you could even have one more pass catcher for Houston and just say, I need Dell to catch one touchdown, a long touchdown, and
Yeah,
then Nico Collins to catch a lot of short passes, and you're there. So
we've
yeah,
got
that's definitely
Dalton.
the environment I like most.
Yeah, we got Dalton Schultz at 1% ownership and at 4,300. I mean,
Yeah.
red zone usage is there. Could easily
Yep.
fall into the end zone.
Yep.
Um,
Jalen Naylor, he caught a TD last week, and another player who he's got a ton of speed. He just needs to catch one,
yep,
and he's there at his salary.
for sure. Quarterbacks. Let's talk a bit about our quarterbacks here. And we already talked about, at least me. I guess you haven't voiced your opinion, but I'm guessing you're on the same page as me. I don't like Geno Smith this week. All these other
Not at that
players
ownership.
around him, yeah, no. All these other players around him have massive floors and ceilings with the rushing upside, and Geno Smith does not, quite frankly.
Yeah, there's just too many ways for the Geno play to not work out at 10% ownership
Yeah,
to make
low
it not worth it.
total. The Dolphins might not be able to move the ball. They might just be running the ball for the last 2 quarters of the game.
Yeah.
But a quarterback I like this week, already talked about it, pretty low ownership relative to his ceiling and the plays around him. I'm going to go to Dak. I already highlighted the game environment and how much we like CD Lamb in that spot at ownership. Dak's right there with him. 5% ownership for a quarterback who can easily throw 4 passing touchdowns, 300 yards, and his price is really not all that much.
Yeah, I mean, any one of the Kyler, Lamar, Dak, Darnold, any one of those four to me, I love. I can't. I mean, any one of those plays makes sense to me as long as they're paired smartly with the rest of your lineup. I mean, I
Yep.
guess Lamar would be the one player you don't have to stack, but everybody
Right.
else in that group I would stack for sure.
And that's almost an interesting way to stack that game too. I know he's more owned, but people who are playing Lamar might still be stacking him. And it's not that that can't work, but Lamar so many times last year has just been the naked play to have, and you can run back a bunch of high price guys on the other side of the ball on Dallas.
What do you think about a naked Justin Fields stack Justin Fields this week?
Yeah,
Just Justin Fields on his own. He's super cheap, tons of running upside. Los Angeles hasn't been challenged at all so far this year, and I think this is the Steelers' first home game, right? Did they have a home? They didn't have a home game last week. I don't think.
I don't think so. I actually ran a few of those last week, the naked Justin Fields and jamming in high price guys elsewhere. I like that play as a concept. The only thing that worries me this week is the game total.
Yeah, for sure. 35 is pretty. It's
Yeah,
like a Big Ten West showdown.
exactly.
Harbaugh's in his element.
Yeah. Let's move on to running backs. Jordan Mason still underpriced for his role in that offense, and the game total is good. Hard.
We saw
Like
Detroit just run all over. Detroit ran all over Los Angeles in the first game. The only real concern for Mason on DraftKings is just that he's not as involved as McCaffrey is catching the ball. But aside from that,
plenty of touchdown equity there. I'm going to go to the Detroit game actually for my running back pick of the week, and I guess I'm going to cop out and say both of them, but I like Gibbs and Montgomery a lot on the ground here against Arizona.
That makes sense to me. You wouldn't play them together ever, would you? I guess they're probably too expensive for that. Yeah.
No, I mean there's times last year when I would. I guess more so in showdown, but
yeah,
if Detroit is scoring a ton of points and is coming through the ground, I can see them both hitting a score you need. But I think more likely than not, I'm just playing one of the two.
Yeah, that's fine to me. Thanksgiving slate, you could play them together probably.
Yeah, exactly.
That actually they'd probably be a really good play together on the afternoon because they're in that like 5-game afternoon window. That'd be one where you could allow that to happen.
Yeah, it's also a good way to get unique because nobody else really are playing two running backs from the same team.
Yeah.
You want to give us a shout out here at the running back position?
Oh, yeah, let's go Saquon Barkley, who's expensive, but I know everybody's in love with the Saints right now. I'm not the biggest believer. I mean, we've seen Derek Carr do this before with the Raiders actually multiple times. He started out hot to start the year and then cooled off. And I mean, Barkley, we saw what Saquon Barkley's able to do in their first game against Green Bay. And I mean, he kind of was on the bad end of variance last week and still just a ton of volume for him. If his knee isn't down at the half-yard line, his stat line was way different with an extra touchdown.
Yep.
So, I mean, the upside for him is pretty incredible in this Philly offense right now. Still no A.J. Brown. I mean, they're going to need to get him the ball a lot. So I'm going right back to Barkley at low ownership. I think everybody's excited about Hurts because Hurts finally remembered he can run the ball.
Yeah.
So I'll just play the lower owned guy.
Yeah, I like that a lot. You're getting some really good ownership, 5% for Saquon Barkley, who has the opportunity to be the highest scoring running back of the week.
Yeah. I mean, I talked about how good late swap is in that slate, and that all my recommendations are all early slate plays. So.
Yeah.
Don't listen to anything I say, I guess.
Yeah. All righty. Let's float into the wide receivers, and then we'll get out of here. A play that I think is going underlooked this week as far as ownership, the game environment, and the stacking options with them. Going right back to the well, he's more expensive this week, rightfully so, but the game total is good. It's a good environment, and he's at 4% ownership, and that is Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yep. Although, what if he reverts back to his fast walking speed or whatever?
Yeah,
16 miles an hour.
Yeah. I mean, it's GPP. We're looking for those ceiling guys, and Marvin Harrison has that
for sure.
And the stacking
stealing and ownership as well.
Mm-hmm. And it's a good environment, even if you're not playing like a primary stack from here, like a Jared Goff or Kyler Murray. Doing a secondary stack here where you're playing like one line and one cardinal and your other lineup where you're targeting a different game with your QB, you're getting pieces from both sides of the ball there in a high total close spread game. So I like that a lot.
Yep. Mine, I don't know. I'm between a couple. I can see the vision for Odunze having his breakout game a week after Marvin Harrison.
Mm-hmm.
I talked about it feels like a cop-out to talk about Justin Jefferson again, but they're just force-feeding him targets right now, and if he doesn't hurt his quad last week, he has a monster game, and everybody's talking about how he's the best receiver in the NFL.
Yeah.
So I like going back to there. Trying to think of anything else. I mean, Rashishi Heat now priced up where he's getting like 3 targets a game, but they're all 40-yard passes.
Yep.
Can't really get there. I'll just say one of the Texans, one of Nico or Tank Dell would be my receiver pick. I don't know what we're calling this segment, but my receiver pick
Sure.
would
No,
be
I
one of
like
those
that.
two.
Yeah, Rashid's weird. I was on him all over last week, and it obviously worked out. But like you said, the role is like a downfield, super high A dot role where it's either boom or bust, and eventually it is going to bust, right?
Yeah.
So
And we talked about how last week he was an amazing pivot off of Yoshibas Super Chalk.
yeah,
Actually, I think in the end, Yoshibas didn't end up being that owned, but how he's just a great play because he has insane and a super high ceiling and no ownership compared to somebody who's going to get like lower A dot throws that doesn't have the same upside. So I mean, it makes sense, but now he's priced up and has ownership. So I just
yeah,
don't think I want to go there with him.
yeah, exactly. You want these high upside boomer bust plays at low ownership, not when he does hit, you're already chopping with 12% of the field.
Right. Because I mean, what is his what is like the if you were to look at the bottom, this is super simple, but if you look at the bottom 12% of Rashid Shaheed outcomes, it's all zeros.
Yeah, no,
And then
100%.
it's just a very wide distribution of outcomes for him.
Yeah. Any questions from the audience or things you guys want us to cover before we get out of here? Give you guys a few minutes to type.
We're not going to do tight end where one of us chooses Trey McBride and the other chooses Brock Bowers.
I was just gonna say I'll pick Brock Bowers if you want me to.
Okay, I'll take Trey McBride.
Boom, there it is. I mean, I guess we don't really talk about tight end too much, but ownership this week's kind of flat. I guess Fergie too. I do like Fergie this week in that as a part of a DAX stack, but I mean, there are not a lot of viable tight end plays this week. And we've kind of seen so far this year that tight end hasn't been like it's not like a year where Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews are scoring 20 or 30 points on a slate. And tight ends just sort of like those, maybe you pair them with a quarterback, maybe you just save salary there. They just kind of plug somebody in.
Yeah, I mean, I guess on FanDuel, Travis Kelce is also on the slate and Kyle Pitts because they include the Sunday night game.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just state of the position right now. I mean, who even in like regular season long fantasy, who are the tight ends you even want on your roster? It's just those two basically.
Yeah, the years past. I mean, obviously, I think Kelce was going early, like round 2 or round 3 maybe, but that's when he was Travis Kelce, wide receiver 1 of the Kansas City Chiefs with a 12 targets a game type of deal and all the red zone usage.
Yep.
We aren't seeing that sort of prototype of a tight end yet. Highest owned tight end on the slate is Brock Bowers at 6.8%.
Yep. I mean, I don't blame people for wanting to play him too. He was awesome in college. He's like almost a no doubt going to be productive at the NFL level. He was so good in college. And like all the ways that he was used at Georgia is exactly how he'd get used in the pros and how he's being used by the Raiders now.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, he just seems like the safest of all of them. And he's only 5,400 isn't too bad for him.
Yeah, right there with you.
What a mess. What a mess for season long.
Yeah, good Lord. My team's already in shambles. Both leagues I'm in, so this is what it is. Yeah, good luck this week, guys. Yeah, anything you want to say before we head out of here?
Nope, that's it. I'm talked out.
Alrighty, man. You guys head over to AceMind or get lineups. Join our Discord. Yeah, acemind.io. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you later.
I see you guys.